So welcome back to week 3 of the JavaScript Fundamentals course. In today's lesson, we're going to be talking about variables. Now, most of the time, a JavaScript application needs to work with information. So a couple examples, an online shop where you might want to include goods being sold and a shopping cart, or a chat application, in which case the information might include users, messages, and any kind of data associated with that stuff. Now, a variable is named storage for data. You could use a variable to store all kinds of stuff. Now, in today's video, we're going to be going over basically what a variable is and how to name variables and constants and how to name things right. Now, we're not going to be getting into the difference between different kinds of variables like var, let, and const in this video. Perhaps in another video we'll do that, but for now, let's just get started with a little intro to variables. So over here in VS Code, pretty much, we can create a variable just by saying let, and then giving it a name. So we're gonna create a variable with the name message. Now you can put some data into it by using the assignment operator, which is pretty much just the equal sign, like so. So if we wanted to put some data into our message variable that we just created, we would simply say message equals, and then whatever we want our message to be, followed by a semicolon. So that string is now saved into the memory area associated with this variable, and we can access it using the variable name. So say if we wanted to make our alert be hello, we would just use that message that we made. So we would just put message inside the parentheses here, and then our alert would show hello. So let's go ahead and check it out here. There we go. And our alert, we get hello. Now if you want to know how I'm doing the live server here, where I can look at the changes in real time, just hop over to the first video in this series, JavaScript Fundamentals Week 1, where I show you how to install that live server extension in VS Code. Pretty handy stuff to have. But anyway, so a little more about variables. We can be a little bit more concise if we want, and put the assignment into the variable declaration. We could put them on the same line, pretty much. So that's not going to hurt anyone. So we could say something like let message equals hello. And that would absolutely function the same. And if we want, we could also declare multiple variables in one line. So say if we wanted another message, we could say message 2, perhaps. All right, and that's absolutely fine. And then what we could do, if we want to combine these pretty much in our alert, is we would just say message plus message 2. Easy peasy. And then if we have a look over here, we get hello, what's up? Now, you would want to put a little space there in your message 2, just so you have a space. As we can see, that works fine. But it's not really great practice to put all of your variable declarations in one line. For the sake of readability, you should absolutely use separate lines. So ideally, separate lines like so is the way to do it. And you could also define multiple variables in a multi-line style with commas. So instead of having the semicolon at the end of each one, you could have a comma, like so. We could have message 3 if we want here, and just, keep declaring them like that, and put the semicolon at the very end, so separated by commas, like so. Now they all do the same thing. It's just a matter of personal taste and preference and how you want your code to look. So here's a real life analogy that can help you grasp the concept of a variable. You want to imagine it as a box for data with a uniquely named label on it. For instance, the variable message can be labeled as a box message, and the value hello is in that box. Now we can put any value in the box. We can change it as many times as we want. If we want to change it and say, a different message, we could absolutely do that. When the value is changed, the old data is removed from the variable. Now we can also declare two variables and copy data from one into the other. So say we wanted to create a variable. We'll call it hello. And then in here we'll just say hello world. All right. Now we want to make a new variable. We'll call this message again. So we'll say let message. And message, we can set to equal the hello variable that we've made. So say if we wanted our alert to be, instead of hello, we want it to be message. Let's see what that does. So if we hop over to our window here, we'll see that we get hello world, which is the contents of the hello variable, even though our alert is set to be message. That's because we've assigned one variable to another variable. Now, a handy pointer is that a variable should only be declared once. A repeated declaration of the same variable is an error. So what that means pretty much, if we say, we'll get rid of this, we'll say let message equals hello, and then we try and declare it again, goodbye, that'll give us an error. So now, as we can see, our alert doesn't work at all. It's pretty much because declaring a variable twice triggers an error. All right, so you don't want to do that. Anyway, let's get into variable naming. So there's only two limitations on variable names in JavaScript. First is the name can only contain letters, digits, or the symbols, the $, or the underscore. So a couple valid names would be user name or user123. So you can have names with numbers, whatever you want, as long as it's a letter, number, or those two symbols. So typically, when names contain multiple words, Camel Case is what you want to use now. Camel Case is when you have the first word in the name is a lowercase, and then the second one starts with an uppercase letter. So like our C here is uppercase. So that's what Camel Case is. So ideally, it's very common practice to use Camel Case like that. So one thing that you don't want to do is use a number to start off your variable, or have your variable be just named a number with no letters. That wouldn't be correct. So as we can see, we get the little red squiggly lines. So VS Code is telling us, no, that's not correct. You don't want to do that. I believe you also can't use a hyphen to separate names either. So no hyphens allowed. So VS Code is going to yell at us here too. Can't use a hyphen. That's not correct. Now, case is very important in creating your names. JavaScript is case sensitive. So a variable named hello and hello in uppercase, they're different variables completely. So What's one common way to define uppercase variables is with a constant. Those are typically uppercase. So there's a widespread practice to use constants as aliases for difficult to remember values that are known prior to execution. So one common thing is colors. So for colors, you would say const color red, and then you would assign the hex code for red into this variable because it would be a constant. It wouldn't be changing. So you can do that. And then if we were to assign that color to another variable, we could say let color, and then we'll say color red. All right, so that's absolutely correct there. And then we can put that into an alert here, like so, easy peasy. And there we go. We would get our hex code there for red. So anyway, it's a lot easier to remember typing color red as opposed to the hex code. So if you're working with colors, that's one area where constants are ideal to use. And it's a lot easier to read as well than looking at hex codes and trying to figure out what they mean. But anyway, when talking about variables, there's one more very important thing. A variable name should have a clean and obvious meaning describing the data that it stores. So, like with color, that's a pretty obvious thing there. But one thing that you wouldn't want to do is say, just use one letter like that. So you might know what it is at the time, but coming back around to it a few months later, or if someone else is working on your code, or if you're working on someone else's code, that's not really a good practice. So you definitely want to give your variables clean names with obvious meaning that are human readable. So stay away from abbreviations and just make them descriptive and concise. So whatever say your team is doing, if you're working on a team or if you're working in a company, they'll usually have a variable naming best practices that they adhere to. So, but anyway, that's about it. I hope you learned a little bit from this short little JavaScript fundamentals video talking about variables and how to create variables and how to assign them and how to name them properly. If you did, feel free to drop a like and subscribe if you want to see some more videos like this. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and drop a comment down below and I'll answer them right away for you. But anyway, thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next video.